what is quite possibly the biggest one of the biggest pieces of domestic news going on right now, and that is once again Texas Republicans looking to do mid-decade redistricting that would hand the Republicans 5 seats in the House of Representatives. I hate gerrymandering. I think gerrymandering is a scourge on our democracy, on our electoral system. I don't give a shit if Republicans do it. I don't give a shit when Democrats do it. Nobody should be doing it. Congressional districts should not be heavily modified as they are currently in the United States of America. The Republicans, however, are far more egregious with this, and that is done intentionally. Republican policy and Republican politics are largely unpopular to the general public. The only time Republicans win elections is when there is low voter turnout. No one wants lower taxes on the wealthy. No one wants more deregulation. No one wants lower corporate taxes. The only people that want that are the wealthy and the business owners, but they're not a big enough voting bloc to be able to get that every 4 years during a general election. Republicans historically have done this. They have cheated. They have rigged the system. Being a conservative in the United States of America means that you hate democracy. You don't think democracy is a good thing. You despise the fact that the general public has this much power in the election cycles, whether it be in the midterms, whether it be in local races and Senate races. The Republicans are the only party who bitches about losing elections 4 or 5 years after the fact. They are the only party that does this ridiculous gerrymandering. Take a look at some of the most heavily gerrymandered districts in the country. They are all Republican. They are shapes that the human mind would not have been able to comprehend 300 years ago. Socrates would look at some of these districts in Texas and be fucking confused. Also remember, who was the party that stole the election from Al Gore in 2000? George Bush. They cannot play by the rules. If they did play by the rules, Republicans would be smoked in every election. This has been going on for a couple days now. The Republicans wanted to do this redistricting. The Democrats left the state so that they wouldn't be able to force a vote. In the aftermath of that, Ken Paxton was like, I'm going to arrest all the Democrats who fled the state of Texas and didn't allow us to go ahead and get this vote done. You have Texas representatives in New York, in Boston, in Chicago, prolonging this vote.
Members, a quorum is not present.
Tonight, Texas Republicans issuing civil arrest warrants for the Democrats who left the state in a Hail Mary move to block a controversial redistricting bill.
The Constitution says...
Can we just talk about how fucking insane it is to even float this idea? Do you know how ridiculous you sound saying that we should arrest the Democrats for not being present to vote? And the conservative media is trying to spin it like, oh, well, people don't want to see them fleeing from work. It's like, okay. They don't want this ridiculous-ass redistricting map. People don't want what the Republicans are doing in Congress anyway, stripping healthcare away from 12 million people. Where were the Republicans when Ted Cruz went to fucking Cancun as his state's power grid was failing and then blamed it on his 13-year-old daughter, saying that she wanted to take a vacation?
The members of the legislature shall show up to do their jobs.
More than 50 Texas Democrats headed to Chicago, New York, and Boston over the weekend, stalling a Republican push to redraw congressional districts in their favor.
Why do you believe it is important for Texas to take this rare step of mid-decade redistricting?
Oh, because we have the opportunity. We have the time, we have the opportunity, and we have the advantage.
In New York,
you have the advantage, yes, but they're doing this because Republicans know they're going to get fucking dicked down in the midterms. That's the unfortunate reality right now. And I do say that not like optimistically, because there is a caveat there. Republicans will get dicked down in the midterms if there are a wave of if there is a wave of progressive opposition running in districts, running in Republican districts. The fact of the matter is this: the general public is not happy with the way that the country is trending. They don't like the one big beautiful bill. They don't like that the cost of living is still so fucking expensive. They don't like everything that's going on with the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. They don't like the genocide that is happening in Gaza. All of this is happening with a Republican president and with Republican majorities in the House and in the Senate. The party that is in power is who gets blamed. That is the Republican Party. Everything points to them getting beaten in 2026 and losing these slim advantages that they already have. Of course, none of this is set in stone, but I would imagine that come 2026, especially once we see the fallout from the tariffs and from the one big beautiful bill, it is going to look even bleaker. Additionally, this is anecdotally, of course, every time there's a Republican town hall, they're virtually almost like they are one step away from getting spat on by their constituents, deservedly, mind you. We're going to reach a point where people in Nebraska and Iowa and upstate New York are bringing tomatoes to their town halls to throw at their elected representatives. The polling numbers show this as well. The majority of people in this country, if it's not the majority, it's the plurality. They are not happy with the way that the country is trending under Republican leadership. And it's because Republican leadership is fucking dog shit. There are two parties in America. There's the party that does nothing, which is the Democratic Party, the do-nothing Democrats. And then there's the Republican Party, which does exclusively bad things.
By Texas Democrats, the governor said she'd push her state to consider redistricting in response to what's happening in Texas.
This is a war. We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off.
Governor Greg Abbott today ordering...
Mind you, New York State redistricted a couple years ago, and Republicans gained 5 fucking seats. Basically, the entire electorate of Long Island changed, along with, I think it was Westchester. Polling USA put out a tweet in the aftermath of this news originally being reported where they said, I'm putting together a team. And it was pictures of New York, California, Colorado, and Chicago that were just all blue. The districts were entirely redrawn to make them all Democratic. And I looked at that and I said, this is exactly what I would do. I would, if I were the governor of a blue state, I would draw up district maps like that, because I know for a fact that if I did, the Republicans would vote to ban gerrymandering, which would be the best possible outcome.
State troopers to find and arrest the Democratic lawmakers who today dared him to try.
Subpoenas from Texas don't work in New York, so he gonna come get us how? Subpoenas in Texas don't work in Chicago. He's gonna come get us how?
The decisions that come from this chamber could reverberate nationwide. Law enforcement now empowered to bring Democrats back to their empty seats. House rules allow Republicans to lock members inside until they get a chance to vote on this bill. In July, President Trump pushed his allies in Texas to redraw the map to pad the tight Republican margin in Congress.
Just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
Some Democratic strongholds would be absorbed into red districts, including downtown Austin, one of the most liberal parts of the state. Under the proposed map, it would
Look at this fucking map, dude. What is happening? You have 4 full counties, okay? And then a little sliver right here, a little land bridge into part of Travis County. Who's going to look at this and say, you know what, this is how we should do democracy? Remember, guys, why does gerrymandering exist? Why does gerrymandering exist? Gerrymandering exists to ensure safety for whichever party is drawing up the map. When Republicans redistrict, they are redrawing these lines based on previous election data to ensure that it is a safe Republican district. This is not democracy. They say we love the Constitution. Republicans say that they would tongue kiss Alexander Hamilton, and then they turn around and do the most undemocratic shit possible. It's because they don't actually give a fuck about democracy or the Constitution. They just pretend to be patriots because the Republican Party is somehow associated with patriotism.
In a deep red district drawn into a massive rural area stretching 3.5 hours east, Representative James Tallarico is camping out in Chicago.
It's almost like two football teams heading out of the locker room in halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules for the second half so that they can win the game. I mean, that's cheating, plain and simple. And if they're going to cheat, we're not going to play.
Ryan joins us now live. Ryan, walk our viewers on how this stands.
I think that while this is like the only thing that Texas Democrats can do in this instance is not play. If one team is going to cheat, then you also have to cheat. I'm somebody who thinks that steroids should be allowed in baseball. But everyone gets to do steroids. Either everyone does steroids or nobody does steroids. Either everybody has a nuke or nobody has a nuke. This is why, like Gavin Newsom, for example, and Kathy Hochul have come out and said, you know what, we're going to do just that. Like Gavin Newsom, of course, like when it's time to say fuck the Republicans, there is no louder voice than Gavin Newsom.
Could end.
Well, Democrats in Chicago tell me they packed for 3 weeks, hoping to run out the clock on this special session. Republicans say, well, Democrats may be able to stall this bill. They can't stop it, Tom.
And speaking of Gavin Newsom, a California plan is likely the Democrats' best option in the redistricting wars. As Texas Republicans move ahead with redistricting to protect or even expand the GOP's slim majority in the U.S. House, Democratic-run state... protect or even expand. It is going to expand. It's going to give them 5 fucking seats. Democratic-run states led by California are pushing forward with their own efforts to draw new maps and add Democratic seats. No Democratic states can shift the balance of power as dramatically and quickly as Texas, where Republican lawmakers can enact new maps, giving them as many as 5 more GOP-controlled seats as soon as they establish a quorum, which state Democrats have denied them by fleeing the state. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom has urged lawmakers to draw a new map to put before voters in a November special election. The map could flip 5 of the Republicans' 9 seats in the state if voters approve it in a ballot initiative in November, per CNN sources. I would say, again, go a step further. Make every seat Democratic. Force Republicans to vote to ban gerrymandering. There is also an actual policy approach to this. The way that you can, like, maybe not so much in like local elections, but nationally, gerrymandering only matters in regional elections, but regardless, it's still applicable. The way that you overcome this is by being someone with a working class, populist forward agenda, talking about the same things that Bernie Sanders talks about. $15 minimum wage, free universal child care, free college education, paid time off, fixing the busted ass healthcare system. That type of policy plays well regardless of where you go, because there are still more people than not who would experience life-changing benefit from a set of policy like that. And even if you're in a district that is upper middle class or even upper class, they would also still see some improvement. Newsom said the plan would go forward only if Texas completes its redistricting effort. Quote, things have changed. We're reacting to the change the governor said at a news conference on Monday. They've triggered this response and we're not going to roll over. Texas's mid-decade redistricting, undertaken at President Donald Trump's behest, has brought together a Democratic Party beset by infighting and facing historically low approval ratings, even as party leaders vow to fight back against Texas and other Republican states. Discussing redrawing their maps, they are limited in how much they can retaliate. This will not solve the low approval rating. Not to go off on a tangent because I've talked about that at length before, the Democratic Party needs some serious introspection and accountability if they want to change how they are perceived. The current leadership sucks ass. People like Bernie Sanders and AOC, even though she's, kind of even though she's seemingly kind of at this point, they are the people who the Democrats should be pushing forward in leadership positions. Someone like Andy Bashir as well. Even Tim Walz, even though he's still kind of after getting, cooked in this most recent election. In several of the 15 states where Democrats hold the governorship and both chambers of the legislature, including New York, Washington, and Colorado, maps are drawn by independent or bipartisan redistricting commissions, which are meant to thwart the sort of partisan gerrymandering Democrats are now seeking to advance. Yeah, except that shit clearly doesn't work because, again, in New York, the most recent redistricting gave the Republicans 5 seats. So clearly that shit doesn't work. In other blue states, including Maryland and Illinois, Democrats have already drawn aggressively gerrymandered maps. Republicans have pointed to Illinois' map to argue they are within their rights to redraw lines in Texas. Meanwhile, Republicans, who have trifectas in 23 states, have more ground to gain in a redistricting tug of war. GOP lawmakers in states such as Missouri and Florida have also expressed openness to new maps. Ohio, where lawmakers must redraw their maps under state redistricting laws, could also yield additional seats. Quote, "There's not a scenario where we don't have more seats that we can go flip than they do," a Republican close to the GOP districting process told CNN. "Those hurdles haven't stopped Democratic leaders from pushing ahead." Quote, "I'll look at our laws. I'll find a path because we cannot take this lying down," said New York Governor Kathy Hochul on Monday. Quote, "We can't surrender when we have to fight for our lives." Here's what Democratic leaders say they plan to do in response to Texas's redistricting push. California. If voters approve Newsom's plan, California would retain its independent Citizens Redistricting Commission and new maps would stay in place only through 2030. Democrats hold 43 of the state's 52 congressional seats. A new map would endanger California Republicans such as Representative Kevin Kiley, who said he would introduce legislation Tuesday prohibiting mid-cycle redistricting. See, this is the point. If you take away all of the Republican seats, they have no choice but to ban gerrymandering. It's foolproof. It's foolproof. I don't love what's going on in Texas, and I don't think it's a good thing in any state. Quote, Kylie said this. "We have redistricting done once a decade for a reason, and that's because it is a disruptive process, albeit a necessary one because of population changes." And so I personally think that, gerrymandering wherever it occurs is not a good thing. Wherever it occurs is not a good thing. I'm guessing that's a typo. Kiley recently spoke with House Speaker Mike Johnson to make his pitch for why he believes, quote, "the onus really lies on the Speaker of the House to put a stop to the redistricting fights breaking out across the country." Mike Johnson is a pussy. He is so not respected by the House of Representatives. Say what you will about Nancy Pelosi, but when she was the Speaker, them motherfuckers listened to her. Mike Johnson is effectively a puppet for Donald Trump. This guy is afraid of everything. He does not he is the most forgettable Speaker of the House, it seems. He's shaping up to have that kind of tenure. I talked to the Speaker publicly and privately about how it's important for him to show leadership. I mean, he's ultimately the leader of the House, and I think that's within his power to make an impact here. Kiley, who also believes the Democrats have a role to play, told CNN. Well, Mike Johnson also likes this. Mike Johnson also thinks this is a good thing because he's a fascist goblin as well. He's also come on, this guy who has a whose porn accountability partner is his son. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm throwing that out there because I don't think that anyone should ever talk about Mike Johnson without mentioning it, without mentioning how fucking weird that is. In New York, where legislative maps are drawn by an independent commission, Democratic leaders introduced a proposed constitutional amendment last week that would allow lawmakers to redraw the state's congressional map mid-decade if another state does so first. At best, New York Democrats wouldn't be able to change their maps until the 2028 election. The measure would need to pass in 2 consecutive legislative sessions and be approved by voters in 2027 before state lawmakers could redraw their congressional maps. I'm more so preying on the downfall of gerrymandering because this is just fucking ridiculous at this point. This is, of course, still a developing situation, so as more and more updates come out, I will be discussing them, but that's about the extent of it to this point. But don't forget, folks, the Democrats are just playing politics here. Something that they are well within their right to do so. And yet the Attorney General of Texas is saying that they should all be arrested. Think about how fucking batshit that is. And more importantly, think about the reaction from the conservative media if this were going on in a blue state. And the attorney, like, imagine if Letitia James said this, the Attorney General of New York, said this about New York State Republicans. Could you imagine the fucking outcry that would be occurring from Republican media?